Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. I've been given a bit of a hard time in the past when I've used the Sun newspaper as a source for news stories and pictures and things like that. And obviously that's not just due to the fact that it's an aggressive cancer and a stain on our society, it's because of the fact that they lied about the Hillsborough disaster mainly. So point taken in that regard, but as if I needed another reason to not use the Sun as a source, I was reading their exclusive story about a female teacher who sexually abused a schoolboy. The schoolboy was 15, therefore too young to legally consent to her advances, therefore I believe that would be statutory rape and therefore make her a child rapist. But that fact seemed lost on the Sun newspaper, who treat her as if she's some kind of sex bomb superstar. I thought we were past the point of people not realising that teenage boys also need protection from predatory women like this, because 15-year-old boys are susceptible to being taken advantage of by women. That is why they are equally protected under the law. They need to be protected from the sexual urges of adults 20 years older than them who know better. It's common sense. I was quite sure that most people were aware of that fact by now, but the Sun doesn't care. All the Sun cares about is titillating its readers by the looks of things. Before I get to the story that the Sun's actually written though, it's worth mentioning that in this case, the court has taken a stronger stand than it normally does with female abusers of this type, because this filthy degenerate predator that you're looking at on the screen just now has just been given 6 years and 2 months in prison, which is longer than I expected her to get, and I bet it's longer than she expected to get, because these predators tend to get way more lenient treatment than this normally. So in a way, I think good on the judge for giving her this sentence, although the sentence is clearly far too short, at least in my opinion, which is a sad reflection of the system that I still say good on the judge for giving her 6 years, but at least she got some time in the slammer. And one thing that I am genuinely pleased about is the fact that she's been subjected to a lifelong sexual offences prevention order, a SOPO, which means for the rest of her life, up until the day she dies, the police will have the power and obligation to arrest her if she breaches the rules of that SOPO order, and that order will contain things which are not crimes. For example, she may be required to tell the police if she purchases a new mobile phone or goes to a certain location, or she might be told that she has to stay away from certain age groups, and if she does not abide by these rules, she will be arrested and most likely jailed again. So that may be a sign that the courts are taking these things more seriously. They should hand out far more of these lifelong sexual offences prevention orders. And it's certainly a sign that the court recognises she's an abuser. Although I think until we start seeing these women receiving crushingly long sentences all the time, every time, many of them will just continue to take their chances and prey on teenagers when they get the opportunity. But the reason for this video is more to briefly go over the Sun's article, because it reads more like it's trying to be an erotic story or the profile of a porn star. It's as if they're celebrating this woman. It's as if they've forgotten or don't care that they're talking about somebody who committed the premeditated abuse of a child over whom she wielded authority, and who already had been sentenced to 6 years in prison and the lifelong sexual offences prevention order at the time that this article was written. The Sun's happy to put all that aside and treat this 35-year-old teacher as some kind of sex icon. For example, it tells us that this woman, Kandice Barber, drove the 15-year-old pupil to some hay bales and kissed him on the neck and whispered, "Do you want to have sex?" I just want you to imagine, and I know this is a cliche, but imagine that the Sun was writing about a male teacher who'd just taken a 15-year-old schoolgirl to a secluded area and raped her. Would they talk about the fact that he kissed her on the neck first and whispered in her ear? I very much doubt it, and I'd imagine that there would be something of a reaction if they did. It goes on to say, sex-obsessed schoolteacher Kandice Barber was jailed for bedding a pupil, married Barber, 35, was jailed for 6 years and 2 months after romping with a 15-year-old in a field after school. Again, let's imagine that's a male sex offender they're talking about. It might read something like, sex-obsessed teacher Joe Bloggs was jailed for romping with a 15-year-old pupil in a field. It doesn't really work. I mean, firstly, describing a child rapist as sex-obsessed is beyond weird. We know that that is probably a problem they have. And romping. Just imagine saying that a 15-year-old girl was found romping in a field with a 35-year-old man who is her teacher. Absolutely outrageous that The Sun has written it like this. I know these things are joked about in South Park, for example, because it's one of those things that as a society we just haven't got a handle on. We just kind of say it's completely different when it's a female teacher and a male student. But it seems like it's getting worse. There's no shame whatsoever in the way that The Sun has written this. They're being completely open about the fact that they're writing it in order to titillate the audience. Jailed for romping with a 15-year-old in a field after school. Honestly, what a joke that is. It also says Kandice Barber has been jailed for having sex with the schoolboy. Again, using the term having sex. We wouldn't be saying having sex if it was a 15-year-old girl and her married male teacher, 20 years her senior. It's actually a good example of victim blaming, a real example of victim blaming. It goes on to say she demanded sex up to 5 times a day from her husband, and she couldn't sit still for an hour without using a sex toy. Which sounds like she's got some problems, real actual problems, but imagine saying that about a male sex offender, that he just loves sex, and he cannot sit still for an hour without masturbating. Why would a newspaper write that after the crime has already been exposed? Being brilliant journalists, they've also spoken to a friend of the woman in this exclusive, as they call it, as if anyone cares about this exclusive. The reason it's an exclusive is because nobody else wants the story. That's the fact of the matter. But no doubt The Sun paid a couple of grand for the story to this friend that they're supposedly speaking to. The friend says it's no secret she has a massive sex drive. She loved to be in charge. She always had to be the dominant one. Slightly inappropriate language when we're talking about a sex offender, a child sex offender here. What is wrong with the Sun newspaper apart from many things? The friend said Kandice always wanted to be famous but had fallen short. I think that's why she loved the attention sex gave her, and boy did she know how to get it. Yes, she gets it at school from 15-year-olds. It's probably not that difficult. That's why there's laws in place to prevent it happening. Quite disturbing indeed when you take a step back and realise what you're actually reading and what they're writing about. The victim in all this, who gets scarcely a mention, and I don't think he was once called the victim in the Sun's article, he said this woman falsely led him to believe that she was pregnant by him. So she's a bunny boiler as well as a sleazy, degenerate freak weirdo. And him believing that she was pregnant sent him into a panic, and because he was still basically a child, he wanted to tell an adult. She then told him that she would bring him down if he revealed the abuse, which the Sun calls their affair. More victim blaming and more minimising there. Their affair. Not the abuse, their affair. So the victim's GCSE grades suffered, so it's actually affected his school exam results, which are used to get a job later in life. So now he's actually worse off than he would have been had it not been for her behaviour. And he suffered stress and anxiety, which probably comes with the territory of being a teenager, getting taken advantage of by a psycho adult who's 20 years older than you and literally works in your school and threatens you to keep quiet and says she's pregnant when she's not. It's understandable that that would cause a bit of stress to a 15-year-old. Yet, this was written like some sort of profile of the sexy mistress. The Sun needs to be ashamed of itself, which it clearly isn't. The guy who wrote it is called Rob Pattinson. Never heard of the guy before. Don't know if he writes about anything else or just these stories. He's written about 5 articles for The Sun about this woman, and they're all almost exactly the same. basically no emphasis whatsoever on the predatory side of this weird woman. No emphasis on the very real damage that the teenage boy has suffered, and the abuse is described as an affair. Him being sexually abused is described as their affair and as romping. Maybe the worst part is, as I say, they've done about 5 articles on it, treating her like a celebrity in every one of them, and I've just got a horrible feeling that when she gets out of jail, she may well end up getting the red carpet Z-list celebrity treatment from some corners. I'm going to make a little prediction that that might happen, so watch this space regarding that, unless of course prison ages her horribly. Who knows what kind of experience she's going to have in there. Suffice to say, I definitely won't be using The Sun as a source in future videos, other than to pick it apart for being a sinister, rape-obsessed newspaper which somehow hasn't been exposed for what it is yet. It certainly earns the nickname The Scum, that is for sure. And maybe it's fitting that this woman features so prominently in The Scum. Anyway folks, I'm going to leave that one there. If you do see anyone reading The Scum, be sure to snatch it out of their hand. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you like these videos, as that helps me sleep at night. And obviously put your comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers folks.